Okay, we're in the city of Krakow. We're in the new cemetery in the city of Krakow. We're at the kever of the son of the Chassam Sofer, the younger son of the Chassam Sofer, Reb Shimon Sofer. And Reb Shimon Sofer was, in his own right, from the Gedolei Hadar. Throughout his illustrious career, he was offered many prestigious rabbinical positions, which he mysteriously declined. He declined Nikolsburg, he declined Papa. He did accept the rabbinical position in Mattersdorf, but ultimately he became the Rav in Krakow. Here it says that Shafat es Yisrael Arba'im Shana. He was a Rav in Mattersdorf, in this city, and Reb Shimon Sofer was a very amazing personality. He's cited many times in the writings of the Chassam Sofer. So, for instance, we have the Bar Mitzvah drasha that the Chassam Sofer gave at the Bar Mitzvah of Reb Shimon Sofer. Or, for example, Masechta Chulin, Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin, Chassam Sofer quotes the Chidushim of Reb Shimon Sofer that he said when he was 13 years old. Now, Reb Shimon Sofer was the one who organized Shailas Utshuvas Chassam Sofer on Yoredeya. In fact, many people quote the Chassam Sofer, but actually it's Reb Shimon Sofer. The Pituchei Chosam is the Hakdama of the Chassam Sofer on Yoredeya, was written by Reb Shimon Sofer, where Reb Shimon Sofer outlines the worldview of the Chassam Sofer, that the Chassam Sofer held that more than anything in his Avodas Hashem, the most important thing was Harbatzas HaTorah. That's why Reb Shimon Sofer says there's only one individual in history that's called someone who loved Hashem. There's only one individual in Tanakh who is called Oihavi, Avraham Avinu. Why? Because the Chassam Sofer held that when you give up of yourself, L'man Harbatzas Torah, that is the greatest sign of Avas Hashem. Now, Chassam Sofer marries the daughter of Rabbi Kiveger. Okay, they had a number of children and many other children, and they named Reb Shimon Sofer after their ancestor, the author of the Yalkut Shimoni. The Chassam Sofer descended from the Yalkut Shimoni. He named his son Shimon, and Shimon was like a favorite of the Chassam Sofer. When the Chassam Sofer gave Chumash Shir in Pressburg, Reb Shimon Sofer, as a young boy, sat on his lap. He was a poet. His favorite piyut was Karibain of Rabbi Yisrael Najara, and the Chassam Sofer called him Shimon Chasida. He was a very righteous, Kabbalistic individual. In fact, the Chassam Sofer encouraged him to learn Kabbalah with the Pressburg Dayan, Rav Nassan Binyamin Lieber. And he was 19 years old when the Chassam Sofer passed away, and together with the Ksav Sofer, they put together the various writings of the Chassam Sofer. Now, there's an amazing encounter Reb Shimon Sofer had with Franz Joseph, the Emperor of Austria, because ultimately Reb Shimon Sofer became a member of the Austrian Parliament. And upon seeing Emperor Franz Joseph, Reb Shimon Sofer became so overwhelmed with pachad. By the way, he asked the emperor, normally you have to take off your hat when you see the emperor. He asked permission to keep his hat on so that he'd be able to make the bracha, Shechalak mikvoidai lebasar v'dam. And Franz Joseph acceded, but Reb Shimon Sofer became so afraid, he dropped the paper out of his hand. He became so consumed with fear. And later on they saw that he was very upset at himself, that he says, I have so much pachad from a melech basar v'dam, do I have the same pachad from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? This was the accountability that he put upon himself. Now, one time the governor offered Franz Joseph a special cigar, and it was on the Shabbos. And what do? You have to be makabel the cigar. So he had to think on his feet. He was very clever, and he said, for me, this is such a valuable thing. I want to keep it as a souvenir. How could I let it go up in smoke? This was the chachma of Reb Shimon Sofer. Now, Reb Shimon Sofer wrote Michtav Sofer. These are the writings of Reb Shimon Sofer, and his sons, first of all, based on the laws in Krakow, Reb Shimon Sofer got the aliyah of Kohen every Shabbos. He took the first aliyah, Alpi Minhag Krakow. When he was born, it was a big nest that he survived. The Chassam Sofer writes about him in Ar Chaim Siman Kuf Pei that after a very long, difficult pregnancy, my wife gave birth, Safek ben Zayin, Safek ben Ches. That was the birth of Reb Shimon Sofer. His sons write about him that he would daven like he was 8 years old. He always poured great tears. He afflicted himself with tanesim, and he felt greatly for the pain of Klal Yisrael. These were some of the great achievements of Reb Shimon Sofer. And Reb Shimon Sofer had a practice, and he continued the age-old practice, that on Lag BaOmer he would speak in the shul of the Ramah and gave a drasha, L'Zecher Nishmas, the Ramah, which he continued until his son-in-law, Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer, took over this practice at the end of Reb Shimon Sofer's life, and then ultimately Akiva Kornitzer was Reb Shimon Sofer's son-in-law. His son was Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer, who continued the practice of giving the drashas on the Ramah's yard site until his passing. Sofer, he was a very big baki in the writings of the Shla. By the way, the Chassam Sofer also very often quotes the Kahal Kadosh. He was also very knowledgeable in the words of the Baal HaAkedah. On the last day of his life, which was the 17th of Adar Beis, he turns to his son-in-law, Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer, and he says, my whole life, I always yearned to go to Eretz Yisrael, and I never had the opportunity to do that. I have not said anything until now, but now the time has come to visit Artseinu HaKadosha. And those were his final words. He died saying, now it's time to return the Artzos HaChaim to the land of the living in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, we're at the kever right next to Reb Shimon Sofer of Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer, the son-in-law of Reb Shimon Sofer, the Mamala Makam of Reb Shimon Sofer. He lived from 1838 to 1892, and on two different intervals of his life, he delivered the historic drasha at the Ramah's kever on Lag BaOmer from 1880 to 1883, and from 1886 to 1891. The big question was, if Reb Shimon Sofer passed away in 1883, why was Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer delivering the drush on the Ramah's yard site from 1880 to 1883? Reb Shimon Sofer was still around. The answer is Reb Shimon Sofer in those last 3 years was in Vienna, because as we mentioned, he was a member of the Austrian Parliament, and he had to attend the sessions at the Austrian Parliament, which he was elected to in 1879. So Akiva Kornitzer was the next great Rav Malamakoimai in Krakow. He was Nifter Yud Aleph Teves Taf Reish Nun Beis 1892, and then after Rabbi Akiva Kornitzer, his son Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer was the next Mamala Makayim. Okay, it's a great zchus to be here in Krakow at the kever of the next great Rav of Krakow, Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer, who lived from 1880 to 1933, but he was the Rav here in Krakow from 1925 to 1933. When he was the Rav in Krakow, he also delivered the famed drasha on the Ramah's yard site. One of the things that he would say is, the practice was that on the Ramah's yard site, the Rabbanan would get up and explain and give over a complex answer to answer one of the difficult rulings of the Ramah. But he would say, if we had enough seichel and intelligence, we wouldn't have the question to begin with. We wouldn't need to explain the Ramah. The Ramah's rulings would be self-explanatory. If you really want to bring honor to the Ramah, then you should fulfill the very first teaching of the Ramah. What's the very first teaching of the Ramah? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. You want to bring honor to the Ramah? Live with the cognizance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu always in front of you. I'll share with you two amazing divrei Torah from Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer. First of all, we find that when Yaakov Avinu wrestled with Sarah Shal Esav, so the pasuk says that he wrestled with Sarah Shal Esav, and what happened to Yaakov Avinu? Nothing. Nothing happened to him. When it says he passed Penuel, and it does not say that Yaakov Avinu was limping. And then it says, Vayizrach lei hashemesh, when the sun shone, v'hud soilei al yerechai, then he was limping. So ask Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer, why is it he's wrestling with Esav the whole night, nothing happens to him? Then the sun shines, and then all of a sudden he's limping? So he says very simple. Esav comes with two weapons, The two weapons of Esav is, he tries to kill us, he tries to attack us. That's something we always are able to stand up to, we're always able to resist, we're always able to overcome. But then Esav has another tactic, he has another strategy. Esav comes and says, let's be one, let's unite. He shows us friendship, he shows us fraternity, he shows us acceptance. That is a much more dangerous strategy against the Jewish people. That is something that always causes suffering to the Jewish people. Persecution, we will always overcome. Assimilation, that's the dagger, that's the vulnerable underbelly. Says Rabbi Yosef Nechemi Kornitzer, Yaakov wrestles with Esav the whole night, and what happens to Yaakov? Nothing. But Vayizrach lo hashemesh, as soon as the sun shines, and Esav smiles at us, that's when we're limping. Says Rabbi Yosef Nechemia, throughout Jewish history, when they try to persecute us, when they try to kill us, we always overcome. But when they try to influence us through assimilation, that is something that it's very difficult to overcome. And we see that in our own times. And here in Europe, they killed 6 million Jews, but there were many survivors. Unfortunately, in America today, more Jews have been lost to assimilation than were lost in the Holocaust here in Europe. And this is what Rabbi Yosef Nechemia taught. That we could wrestle with Esav the whole Golos, nothing will happen to us. But as soon as they smile at us, and finally, he said an amazing insight. This is not in the official Sefer on Lag BaOmer. Maybe in future editions. Rabbi Yosef Nechemia says, what's significant about Lag BaOmer? What happened on Lag BaOmer? We know that the various spheroids correspond to the Aves HaKadoshim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and David. Lag BaOmer is the 5th day of the 5th week. Hoid Shebahoid. Who is Hoid? Aaron HaKohen. So the midah of Lag BaOmer is Hoid Shebahoid, the epitome of Aaron HaKohen. Aaron HaKohen's midah was what? Shalom. So the students of Rabbi Kiva did not have Shalom b'neihem. But on Lag BaOmer, which is the very epitome of Hoid Shebahoid, Aaron HaKohen, Shalom, this is the day the students of Rabbi Kiva stopped dying. This is the amazing insight of Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer, the Rav of Krakow, until 1933. And here we have next to him the son, the ashes of Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer's son, Shmuel Shmelko Kornitzer, who is the final Rav in Krakow, who was killed al Kiddush Hashem doing a shlichus in Auschwitz, and his ashes were brought here next to his father. Zechusam Yagen Aleinu v'al Kol Yisrael Amen. Okay, it's a great zchus to be at the kever here in Krakow. Rabbi Klonimus Kalman, the author of the Marva Shemesh. Marva Shemesh was born in 1751. He's one of the main transmitters and promulgators of what we call Torah's HaChasidus. His father, Rabbi Aaron, they had 10 sons, but of all of them, the one that rose the highest was Reb Klonimus Kalman, who is a student of the Rebbe of Melech, the Chayz Lublin, and Reb Nachman of Rimanov. So he was a student of all the Gedolei Chasidus, and this is what he transmitted to many, many Talmidim. He gave over the Messiah of Torah's HaChasidus. He writes in Parshas Balak an amazing conversation that he heard from the Rebbe of Melech, that he was present when the Rebbe of Melech was asked by Boitzina Kadisha or Meshulam Zusha, the Rebbe of Zisha, how is it that these tzaddikim are able to perform great miracles, Yeshuas, Neflois? This is what the Rebbe of Zisha asked the Rebbe of Melech. How do you do it? Tell me, how do you do it? If you could tell me how to do it, I would also do it. I want in on it. So the Rebbe of Melech said as follows: Klal hadvarim, al yidei his chabrus hatzadikim. When tzaddikim get together, ve'ava, ve'chiba, ve'reos beineim, when there's friendship among tzaddikim, they could be poyel, nisim, v'neflois. That's the klal of everything. By the way, by Hasidim, they hold that when Jews sit together, even if they don't learn and they don't daven, just Jews sitting together, even to eat, the union of Jews together in one place, that itself has tremendous value. In fact, the Sefer Tanya writes that if 10 Jews stand together in one room, even without any Dvarim Shebekdusha, the Kedusha that 10 Jews generate is so powerful that the Malachim are like Nizbatel from this nuclear force of Kedusha. So this is a very big Yesod in Torah HaChasidus. The union of Jews together produces tremendous Kedusha. In fact, says the Rebbe Ramelech, this is the Yesod of being able to be Pal Yeshuais. Whereupon the Rebbe Reb Zisha was Moideh, Bevadai Kizeh Ikar Hakal. That's the Ikar of everything. So there are many great Talmidei Chacham, many tzaddikim, but it is rare that they have this Ava V'chiba V'reyos that the Rebbe Ramelech and the Rebbe Reb Zisha had together, and this is recorded in Parshas Balak of the Marva Shemesh. Zechutza Yagein Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael. Amen. We're standing here in the Ramah Shul on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omar, the yard site of the Ramah. It's a great zechus because historically, from this makom, since the Patir of the Ramah, many notable Rabbanim have had the privilege to give a drasha on the yard site of the Ramah, the Maharash Shach. Then Reb Shimon Sofer, his son, Reb Simcha Bunim Sofer, his son-in-law, Rabbi Kiva Kornitzer, his son, Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer. There have been many, many drashas over the year, and in Europe, thousands of Yidden would flock here before the war for Lag BaOmer to commemorate the yard site of the Ramah. Now it's interesting, the reason why this custom developed to come here on Lag BaOmer, it's not only because it's the yard site of the Ramah, but it's amazing. Besides it being the yard site of the Ramah is actually the one who created Lag BaOmer. Because if you look in the Gemara, we do not find that the students of Rabbi Kiva stopped dying on Lag BaOmer. The Ramah was the first one to mention that on Lag BaOmer, we don't just not say, the Ramah writes in Siman Kuf Lamed Aleph, after the Mechaber lists the days that we don't say Tachnun, the Mechaber says, we don't say Tachnun on Chamish Asar B'Shvat, and on Rosh Chodesh, and not on the Mincha before, and not on Chanukah. Says the Ramah, B'Lag BaOmer ein noiflim al pneim. We also don't say Tachnun on Lag BaOmer. So the Ramah is the one who teaches us that Lag BaOmer is not only the day the students stop dying, but it has halachic significance, namely, we don't say Tachnun. So you say, okay, where does it come from that Lag BaOmer is the day of Simcha? The Ramah in Taf Tzadi Gimel writes that according to the Mechaber, you still cannot shave on Lag BaOmer. Comes the Ramah, uve medinos elu ein noi hagin kedvarav, ela mistaprim b'yom Lag BaOmer, umarbim b'y k'tzas simcha. In other words, the makar that Lag BaOmer is the day of k'tzas simcha was codified by the Ramah. Therefore, it's not only the yard site of the Ramah, but more than that, the Ramah in two places was the one who created Lag BaOmer. Now, Reb Simcha Bunim Sofer, when he came here and he gave a drasha on Lag BaOmer, he said as follows. There are three parshiyos that Lag BaOmer could come out on. Emor is Oisiyos, Ramah, Bahar, whatever the Ramah says, it's like on Har Sinai. And it's like B'chukoisai, Chokuk v'naser sadibrois. Emor, Bahar, B'chukoisai. So this is a remez that the Ramah's yard site comes out dafka this time of the year. I want to share with you on this occasion. First of all, the last words of the Ramah in Or Chaim are V'toiv leiv mishtet tamid. We know the Bnei Yissaschar writes there are 49 days of Sfira. The 49 days of Sfira correspond to Leiv Toiv. The Ramah mysteriously ends Or Chaim V'toiv leiv mishtet tamid, which is a remez that after Leiv, after Lamed Beis Yom, begins the Toiv, the Yom HaHilula of Rav Moshe Isserlus, Zechusa Yagein Aleinu. Now, the Chida never had the Zechus to go. The Ramah never had the Zechus to go to Eastern Europe, but he records in the Shem HaGdolim that his son came to Eastern Europe. He came to Krakow, and he was zoicha to be mishtateach on the kever of the Ramah. And the Chida brings a report that his son said that on the kever of the Ramah, it says the Ramah was nifter in the year Shin Lamed Gimel, which the Taz also writes. The Ramah lived 33 years. Now, this is not historically accurate because Ramah lived 42 years and the Chida himself wasn't here. The Chida is just writing what his son said. Others write that they say the Ramah wrote 33 Svarim. Also, we don't have a record of 33 Svarim of the Ramah. The Ramah was probably nifter in the year Shin Lamed Beis, not Shin Lamed Gimel. However, one thing is for sure, the Ramah was nifter on Lag Ba'omer. So Ramah is inextricably bound with the number 33. On this occasion, I want to share with you two special chidushim. Firstly, a chidush in reading the Ramah. Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer records that on the yards of the Ramah, the minhag is to say over a chidush to explain the dinim of the Ramah. But he says, this is not the greatest kavod for the Ramah. Because if we were on the proper madrega, we would understand instinctively what the Ramah means. We don't have to far'en for the Ramah. The Ramah certainly had a biur amoik in his words. The biggest kavod to the Ramah is that we should fulfill what he writes in the Shulchan Aruch, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. I want to share with you a brief chidush. The opening of Shulchan Aruch is Yiskaber Ka'ari La'amoid Baboiker Kedei Sheyehu Ma'ir HaShachar. You should get up in the morning, that you should awake in the morning. What does the Ramah say? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. What does that have to do with anything? Why is the Ramah saying Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid? Did the Mechaber say something that in any way implies not Shivisi Hashem Negdi Tamid? What is the connection between Shivisi Hashem Negdi Tamid and what the Mechaber said? The answer is very simple, but you have to read the whole Ramah. The Ramah says like this. The Mechaber says you have to get up early. But you'll ask, how can I get up early? This is what Rabbi Pollack was being Mechadesh standing at the Ramah's shul before. How can you get up early? Says the Ramah. By the way, the Ramah is quoting Mar Nevuchim, because Ramah was very connected to the Rambam. You know that the very first halach of the Ramah, he's quoting Mar Nevuchim. That's why the Marshal says about the Ramah, Mi Moshe ad Moshe loy kam k'Moshe, because the Ramah was connected to the Rambam. The Ramah says, when a person sits in their house in front, he doesn't act the same way as if you're sitting in front of a king. When somebody is in the presence of the king, they will act differently than when they're in the privacy of their own home. And one's sitting, says the Ramah, is different. One's walking is different. One's speaking is different. And says the Ramah, therefore, if you're in front of the king, you will never be embarrassed to do what the king wants. And then the Ramah adds parenthetically, but don't fight with people who mock you. And then the Ramah concludes, listen carefully, and if a person lives with the cognizance that they're always standing in front of Hashem, when they go to sleep it will be different. A person doesn't go to sleep in front of a king the way they do in the privacy of their own home. And if even when you go to sleep, you'll go to sleep knowing you're in front of Hashem, umiyad yisoyer mi mishnasoi baboiker. That's how you get up right away. In other words, Ramah is explaining to us the words of the Mechaber. The Mechaber says, get up like a lion. So you say, how am I supposed to do that? The answer is, it's a long program. The program begins that you always place Hashem in front of you. If you always place Hashem in front of you, you'll sit differently, you'll walk differently, you'll act differently, you'll go to sleep differently. And if you go to sleep knowing you're standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, miyad yisar mi mishnasa, that's how you get up. The Ramah is explaining the Mechaber. The Mechaber said, get up, but how? So Ramah says, you need to live with awareness of Hashem. You need to go to sleep with the awareness of Hashem. Many people, how do they go to sleep? They fall asleep, mitoich dvarim betelim. If you fall asleep, mitoich dvarim betelim, then when you get up in the morning, it's very hard to be Yiskaber Kari. But if you make sure you put away all the Dvarim B'Telim, and this is the first halach in Shulchan Aruch. The first halach in Shulchan Aruch is go to sleep mitoich shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, and then memela you'll be Yisrael Mishnasai. Now I want to share with you a chidush that occurred to me today in the city of Krakow, in the city of the Ramah, Irva Ein B'Yisrael. Why did the Ramah pass away on the yahrzeit of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai? What's the connection between the Ramah and the Rashbi? And we know there are many connections. By the way, Rab Shimon Sofer says they're the only two Gedolim in history that their father's name was seared onto their name. Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, Rab Moshe Isserlis. Yisrael was the father of the Ramah. But I'd like to share with you another connection. The Gemara says that the students of Rabbi Akiva passed away from Pesach till Shavuos until Rabbi Akiva went, Ad Shabar Rabbi Akiva, Velimdu Rabbi Seinu Shabadaraim, the rabbis in the south. What's the nafkamina? They're in the south, the east, the north, the west. Why do I care they were in the south? Chazal tell us, the Gemara in Kedushin, the Gemara in Gittin, that Mi Bavel is in the north of Eretz Yisrael, and the pasuk says Mitzafoin tipasach hara. Bavel comes from the north. The problem is Bavel's not in the north of Eretz Yisrael. Bavel's in the east. The answer is as follows. If you notice in the Chumash, Avraham Avinu only goes one direction. He never goes Safain. He never goes Mizrach. He never goes Marav. V'Avraham haloich v'nasaya hanegba. He's always going south. And even when he's coming back from Mitzrayim back to Eretz Yisrael, it should say he's going north. No, he's going Negba. Says Rashi, Negba? He's going to find it. No, he's going to the south of Eretz Yisrael. So say he's going north. Says Hagon Rabbi Shua Heller. When a person faces Mizrach, their right side is Daraim. Their left side is Safain. Midas Hadin is Safain. Midas Harachamim is Daraim. Okay? Midas Harachamim. Chesed is Daraim. Din is Safain. Mi Safain tipasach hara. Bavel conceptually comes from the north. The Midas Hadin comes from the north. By the way, Chazal say that when Hashem created the world, He left the north open to demonstrate that He's the only God. That's why if anybody wants to say they're an Avodah Zarah, we say, make a mechitza in the north. Says Megala Amukos, who's buried here in Krakow. We had in this week's parsha the word Elilim. What does Elilim stand for? Ein Lahem Yecholes Lasois Mechitza. They can't close in the north side. The north is Midas Hadin. The south is Midas Harachamim. What did Rabbi Akiva see? Rabbi Akiva saw that the Talmidim were subject to Midas Hadin. So he had to go to the south. In the south, Torah is a different Torah. It's a Torah of Midas Harachamim. It's a Torah of Chesed. Who did Rabbi Akiva teach? Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon's Torah was Torah's Chesed. How do we see his Torah was Torah's Chesed? Reb Shimon said, Yachal ani liftar es kol olam kulai mi midas hadin. Reb Shimon's Torah was midas hachesed. What do we say about Reb Shimon? Kedai lismay chalav b'shas hadchak. Reb Shimon is the first one you could be soymech on b'shas hadchak. Reb Shimon says he could exempt the whole world of Isra of Nasan. Reb Shimon says, I can make sure nobody sees Pnei Gehenim. Reb Shimon's Torah was Torah's hachesed. Who else did Rabbi Akiva teach? Reb Meir. Reb Meir holds Bein Kachu, Bein Kach Nekram Banim. The Torah of the new Talmidim Rabbi Akiva was Torah's Chesed, Torah's Rachamim, the Torah of compassion, the Torah of understanding a Shas Hadchak. What was unique about the Psak of the Ramah? I'm going to show you. It occurred to me today. The opening line of the Ramah teaches us the Koyach HaTeira of the Ramah. Here comes the Mechaber. Mechaber says, get up at 4 a.m. every day, so that not your alarm wakes you up, that you wake up the morning. That's the first comment of the Shulchan Aruch. So, many people say, I can't even do the first halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. Comes the Ramah, Hagah. Don't worry, you have another 6 hours to daven. And if you daven by the Zman Tefillah, oichid git, you're yotzei. Can you imagine? The Mechaber comes and says, you got to get up every morning like a lion to wake up the morning. Comes the Ramah, no. It's okay, as long as you don't miss the Zman Tefillah. So already hey, this is a Torah's Chesed over here. This is a different type of approach to halacha. And then the Mechaber says, you should really wake up the morning. The Ramah says, don't think it's so hard. Let me explain to you how to do it. I'll explain to you how to do it. The Ramah was the one who, we can't say he innovated, but he is the staunchest supporter of the concept, Kedai lismoich alav b'shas hadchak. Where does this come from? We don't see this before the Ramah. Numerous examples of being soymech on a leniency. We just learned today that the Ramah said under the circumstances the Yisayma could get married. Why? Kedai lismech harabenu tam b'shas hadchak. Many times the Ramah says hefsid meruba shani. The concept that you could be lenient of hefsid meruba, that's the chiddush of the Ramah. The Ramah has another chiddush. We don't tack on two chumras on top of each other. These are all controversial chidushim of the Ramah, but lamaisa they were niskabel and Klal Yisrael. The Ramah's method in halacha, we have a report from Reb Shimon Sofer, who heard from his great father Chassam Sofer, that the reason why the halacha is like the Ramah, because the Ramah is a Gilgal of Hillel. So the Ramah's method of learning, we could say, was similar to what Rabbi Akiva did on Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Akiva went to Rabbi Seinu Shebedaraim because the Torah in the Daraim is a Torah's Chesed, a Torah of Rachamim, a Torah of Kedai Lismoich B'Shas Hadchak. Who more than Reb Shimon do we say, Kedai Lismoich B'Shas Hadchak? So too the Ramah, whose yard side on Lag BaOmer, the Ramah represents for the next Tekufa of Rabbi Seinu Shebedaraim, a Torah of Chesed, a Torah of Rachamim, a Torah of Kedai Lismoich B'Shas Hadchak. So on this occasion, we're mispalel that in the Zechus of the Ramah, all of our tefillos should be answered Barachamim Uveratzain Lanu L'Chol Yisrael Amen Yamale Hashem Kol Mishal Seinu L'Toiva Shkoyach. We're zocheh to be here in Krakow on the Yom HaHilula of the Ramah on Lag BaOmer. We know the Ramah is inextricably bound with the number 33. The Ramah was certainly niftar on Lag BaOmer. According to the Taz, he was niftar in the year Shin Lamed Gimel. And there are many legends of other connections of 33 with the Ramah. As we mentioned, some say he wrote 33 Sfarim. But besides that, the legend is that at the Levaya of the Ramah, they tried
to do the lectures in another place, please?
No. They at the Levaya of the Ramah, they said they try to say 33 shvachim, 33 shvachim of the Ramah, and they came up with 32 shvachim, and they were searching for one more shevach until finally they said on the night of Purim, the Ramah, when people usually would drink, would go around and remind people to daven the Marav. So from here we see the great humility of the Ramah, that even though he is the foundation of all of Hilchos Ashkenaz, he took out of his schedule to remind the people, to Mezakis Harabim, to daven the Marav. Now the Ramah's father, Reb Israel, was the great Parnes and Kotzin, one of the leaders of the community. In the year 1551 to 52, misfortune struck the Ramah's family. First on Asar B'Teves, the Ramah's mother passed away. On Yud Aleph Sivan, his 20-year-old wife, Golda, who's the daughter of Reb Shalom Shachna. Reb Shalom Shachna was the Gadol Hadar of the time. The Ramah was the son-in-law of Reb Shalom Shachna. And then later on in the year, Chav Zayin Sivan, his maternal grandmother, Drezel, passed away. So to perpetuate their memory, the Ramah's father built this shul for the Ramah. And since this shul was built and the Ramah passed away, thousands flock here on Lag BaOmer to pay homage to the great posek of Ashkenazim that we rely on his psak. And besides the Hagois on the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah also wrote Torah Hachatos, which is what we call a codex of dietary laws of Hilchos Kashrus. He wrote Torah Ha'olah on philosophy. The shita of the Ramah was that philosophy and Kabbalah were synonymous. The Ramah wrote a perush on the whole Zohar, which remains unpublished. So we came here to mispal on this Makom Kadosh, and all of the tefillah should be niskabel barachim and baratzain. It's great chus to be here at the kever of Rav Yom Tov Lipman Heller, the Tosfos Yom Tov. You know, one of the very important nekudos about the Tosfos Yom Tov is that Tosfos Yom Tov, in the aftermath of Tach V'Tad, he made a Shelas Chaloim. What was the cause for the terrible Gezeros Nairois of Tach V'Tad? And the response that he got was the reason for the terrible Gezeros is because people were not Zahir, not to speak B'Shas HaTfilah. So let's think about that for a moment. All of these terrible Gezeros Nairois, the Tosfos Yom Tov was Megala, came about because people were not Zahir in Kedushas Beis HaKnesses and Kedushas HaTfilah, and therefore the Tosfos Yom Tov composed a special Misha Beirach that the Rebbeinu Shem should send bracha v'atzlacha for those who are Zahir not to speak B'Shas HaTfilah. So standing here at the Tosfos Yom Tov's kever, if somebody is mekabel upon themselves to have tremendous ahiros during B'Shas HaTfilah, can you imagine what kind of a zechus that would be to power the tefillas that should all be niskabel? I want to tell you an amazing chiddush of the Tosfos Yom Tov. By the way, it's well known, the Tosfos Yom Tov asks the question, why is it when we make Birchas HaTorah, we say Baruch Hu es Hashem hamvayrach d'Shem havaya, and when we make Birchas Hamazon, we say Baruch Elokeinu Shacham Shai. Why by food do we say Elokeinu, and by Torah do we say the Shem Havaya? Says the Tosfos Yom Tov. Because food we can't live without. So Hashem is mechuyev to feed us. So therefore, when it comes to food, we invoke the Midas Hadin. The Torah is Ahava Rabbah. It's a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, when it comes to Torah, we invoke the Midas Rachamim. Also, it's very interesting. How many malachim did Yeshua conquer when he entered Eretz Yisrael? Lamed Aleph Malachim in Sefer Yeshua. What's the significance of the Lamed Aleph Malachim? Says the Tosfos Yom Tov. We know in Olam Haba, how many Olamais is every tzaddik going to have? Asad HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahancha l'chol tzaddik v'tzaddik Shai Olam is 310. There's an idea that even though Midoraisa, a daughter does not get Yerusha, but Midrabanan, how much do you give a daughter? 10%. You know that? It's a takana d'Rabbanan. That even though Midoraisa, a bas is not Yoresh, Midrabanan she gets 10%. So our connection to Hashem, what we get from Hashem in Olam Hazeh, is like a bas. So we get 10% of Olam Haba. Olam Haba is 310, and Olam Hazeh in Eretz Yisrael is 31. That's Pshan the 31 Malachim. Tosfos Yom Tov was born in 1579. He was niftar on Vav Elul, 1654. His father passed away when the Tosfos Yom Tov was only 18 years old. Tosfos Yom Tov had many rabbinical posts. He was a dayan in Prague at 18 years old. He became a rav in Nikolsburg, and then in Vienna, and in many other kehilais. So all of our tefillos in this makom should be neskabel barachamim of ratzain. Ma'anoira hamakom hazeh, we're zocheh to be here at the kever of the Maginei Shloimei, Rabbi Yeshua of Krakow. Maginei Shloimei. Echad min moifes tareinu goin tfartenu hagoin moreinu Rabbi Yeshua ben moreinu Rabbi Yosef niftar b'shnas Zach. That's the year.
Shabbos Zach.
B'Shabbos Zach.
The year was Tach.
And the Maginei Shloimei was written to be able to defend all the explanations of Rashi from the Tosfos. He once said that Rashi appeared to him a dream, and he said, because you defended me, Rashi says, I will greet you in Olam Haba. 30 minutes before the P'tira of the Maginei Shloimei, he's surrounded by his students. He says suddenly, make room, La'or Yisrael, the light of Israel has come. And people wondered, who is this? What's going on? It was Rashi who came to escort the Maginei Shloimei to his rightful share in the Olam Haba, because the Maginei Shloimei defends Reb Shlomo Yitzchaki, defends Rashi from the attacks of Tosfos. And we're going to see the hashgacha that the Maginei Shloimei is buried right next to the Rebbe Reb Heschel. What's the connection between the Maginei Shloimei and Rebbe Heschel? We'll see. Something occurred to me right over here. Okay. Nasan, it's great zchus to be here at the kever of the Rebbe Reb Heschel. There are only a handful of people in history who are called the Rebbe Reb. And it's not because they were a Rebbe of Chasidus, this is prior to that. So the Rebbe of Heschel of Krakow was the official Rav in Krakow, and the story that the Chida records amazingly is that they didn't know who to appoint as the Rav of Krakow. So mysteriously, Megal Mukoi said, the next Rav, Hineni Oimed L'fanecha Sham Al Atzur. Huh? Hineni Oimed L'fanecha Sham? Yeah, they realized Hineni Oimed L'fanecha Sham Al Atzur is Rashi Tevis Heschel. And from this pasuk that the Megal Mukos was Zarak Mipiv, the Rebbe of Heschel was appointed. Now, the Rebbe of Heschel had the neshama of Rabbeinu Tam. So I would suggest that it's not by coincidence that right next to him is the Maginei Shloimei, who had to protect Rashi. So right next to the Rebbe of Heschel is the Maginei Shloimei, who is Megan al Rashi from the questions of the Balei HaTosfos. So whenever you see Rabbeinu Tam, the Rashi is not far away. There's a very mysterious comment of Rashi in Chumash that when Yaakov Avinu came and he stole the birthright and the brachos from Esav, Esav comes in just shortly after, and Esav says to Yaakov, you have anything left for me? And Yitzchak says, no, I have nothing left. Va'oichal mikol, I ate everything. So finally Esav says, habracha achas, can you give me one bracha? So Yitzchak gives Esav one bracha. Hine mishmane haaretz yiyeh moshavecha. You're going to have the fat of the land. What does Rashi say? Mishmane haaretz yiyeh moshavecha. Zu Italia shel Yavan. Rashi says Yitzchak gave Esav Italy. Ask the Rebbe of Heschel, Italy? Why Italy? Why not a different country? Why not Krakow? Why not Greece? Why Italy? So the Rebbe of Heschel said like this: Yitzchak already gave Yaakov the whole world. So the only thing that's left for Esav to get is davar shlo ba'olam, something that's not in the world. But everything's already in the world. But the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that later on in history, when Shlomo Melech married Bas Paroi, Ba Gavriel, he stuck a stick, a pole into the yam, and gathered around it seaweed, and from there it developed Italy. So this is the only thing that Yitzchak Avinu could give Esav, something that at that time was loy ba'il olam. The Chidushim in the Sefer Chanukas HaTorah is from the Rebbe Reb Heschel. Reb Heschel's father was Yaakov. They said about his father Reb Yaakov, Mi Yaakov ad Yaakov lo kam ke Yaakov. Who is the first Yaakov? The first Yaakov was Reb Yaakov Polak, who he said is the Yesod of all of Polish Jewry. So from Yaakov till Yaakov, from Reb Yaakov Polak, who is the Rebbe of Reb Shalom Shachna, who is the father-in-law Rebbe of the Ramah, lo kam as the father of the Rebbe of Heschel, Zechusa Yagen Aleinu, Amen. Manoira Amakom Hazeh, what a great zchus it is to be here in Krakow, Lag BaOmer, at the kever of the Bach, the author of Keser Torah, Bal HaMechaber Sefer Bayis Chadash. The Bach is a commentary on the Torah. There's also Shaus Teshuvas Habach and Shaus Teshuvas Habach Chadashos, which is a major commentary on the Torah. The Bach's father of Shmuel was a very respected member of the community in Lublin where the Bach was born. His name is Rabbi Yoel Sirkis. His mother's name was Sirka. So the name Rabbi Yoel Sirkis is Al Shem Imai. He observed the Marshal in Lublin in his youth. In fact, in the Shaus Teshuvas Habach Hayeshanos, in Simon Kuf Nun Ches, he writes that he remembers when he was a young boy, in the shul in Lublin, his father bought him an aliyah. Now from here we see they even sold aliyahs back in the day. Okay? And his father bought him aliyah, but he's a little kid. And his father bought him maftir, and he laid the haftarah in front of the marshal, and marshal let it slide. So this is a raya. You don't need to be bar mitzvah to read the haftarah. The Bach was a very wealthy man. He maintained a very large yeshiva, and he supported the students from his own funds. Now, the Bach turns to one of his students, Rabbeinu David. He says, Rabbeinu David, you know, my daughter is as beautiful as the moon. Whereupon Rabbeinu David responded, in that case, Rebbe, I would like to be Mekadesh the Levana. And that's how the shidduch was made between the Bach, the father-in-law, and the Taz. If you eat mezainos today and are not makbid on Yashan, you have the Bach to thank, because the Ramah says you can't eat Chadash. The fact that there are those who are lenient and eat Chadash, that is the Kula of the Bach. The Bach also is a great Mekubal. He wrote an entire commentary on the Ramak's Pardes Rimainim. It has a pierce of the Bach. The Bach also wrote Hagois on Shas, where he, I would assume, following in the ways of the Marshal, was sifting through and being menakeh the lashon of the Gemara. Now, his son writes in Hakdama that he never slept his whole life. He would gather large groups and teach them halacha. When it came time to publish the Bach had a very hard time publishing the Sefer. You know, a Sefer, by the way, is like having a baby. You know, it's a long pregnancy, and then the final publishing is like the Leda. And there's a lot of Tsar Gido Banim. And it wasn't working out for the Bach. He couldn't do it. It just wasn't working. And he had a dream. And in his dream they told him, you know, since you've been working on your Svarim, you've stopped your regular practice of Tikkun Chatzos. You're only worried about your own Svarim. You're not worried anymore about the covet of the Shechina. And the Bach took that to heart, and he resumed his practice of being Masabel of Yushalayim daily, and he was Zoicha to write the Bach. On that note, the Bach has a beautiful chiddush. There's a shaila in the Beis Yosef. When you make Al HaMichya, should you say, why we're asking Hashem to take us to Yerushalayim to eat the fruits? That's what we want. We want to go back to Eretz Yisrael to eat pomegranates, to eat papaya. That's why we need the Beis HaMikdash. So there's a shaila in the Rishonim, maybe take out the words v'noichal miperia, to which the Bach writes, absolutely not. The Kedusha of the Shechina, which is present in Eretz Yisrael, goes into the ground, and when peiros grow, they are nourished from the Kedusha of the Shechina. And when you consume the fruits in Eretz Yisrael, you're actually imbibing Kedusha Shechina. Eating fruits in Eretz Yisrael is a very elevated, sanctified practice. And therefore the Bach upheld and maintained the nusach that we say in the Al HaMichya, that we don't only want to go of Halinu Seicha and V'samchenu Bevinyana, but the highest madrega is to go to Eretz Yisrael and also be V'noichal miperia, and therefore v'nizba mituva, the tuv hashchina, in the zchus of Rabbi Yoel Circus, all of our tefillah shv'niskabel brachim and v'ratzayin. Manoira hamakom hazeh, what a great zchus it is to be here in Krakow at the kever of one of the rabbanim of Krakow who never took a salary. He is the one who spread the Kabbalah of the Arizal throughout Poland. He was a Talmud of Maram Lublin. Rav Nassan Nata Shapiro was Niftar in Yud Gimel Iyar from 1585 to 1633. Now I have a very close kesher. This young man, Meir, is a direct descendant of the Megala Amukos, and from my wife. He was a grandson of Nassan Nata Shapiro the first, the Rav in Herdina, and the author of the Mavai Sha'arim. At 30 years old, he became the Reish Masifta in Krakow that was started by Rabbi Yaakov Palak. We saw the Rebbe of Heschel's father was Rabbi Yaakov. We learned Mir Yaakov ad Yaakov le'kom ki Yaakov. He took over the yeshiva of Yaakov Palak. Look what it says by the kever. Ishal lekim kadosh min hakadmoinim. He wrote 252 perushim on the pasuk. Ravlach v'aschanan el Hashem ba'isei leimar. The Chida brings down. He wrote 1,000 perushim on the small aleph of Vayikra. We only have some of them. He had a tremendous command of Nigla. He was a great Mekuba. Rav Shamshon Shapoli writes in Likutei Shoshanim that there's a very difficult medrash. Even the Kadosh Megala Mukos did not explain it. The Megala Mukos was so Kadosh that Reb Chaim Sanzer says that if you would say the name of a Chayla to the Megala Mukos, just mentioning the name, he would have Refuah Shalema. Megala Mukos was Megala. That why do we call Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? Why is he called Nasi? Nasi is a Rashi Tevis. Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu. That's why there's Yaakov Avinu. The last 17 years of his life he was in Mitzrayim. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, last 17 years of his life he was in Tzipori. That's why Rabbeinu is called Rabbeinu HaKadosh, because the third bracha of Shemana Esrei is, the first is Avos, Gevuros, Kedusha. Now, says the Megala Mukos, Oyem v'Noira. Shas begins Me'emasai. Me'emasai is Gematria. Ani Yehuda Kadosh. Moyed begins Yitzios Hashabos. Gematria. Ani Yehuda Hanasi ben Rabban Shimon. Noshim begins Chamesh Esrei. Gematria. Yehuda Nasi ben Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The Seder, it's brought down from Rabbi Chil Halpern, something amazing. Tana D'Be'Eliyahu begins with the word Vayigaresh, which is Gematria, Tana D'Be'Eliyahu. Medrash Tadshe is Gematria, Ze Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, because it was authored by Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Pirkei Rabbi Lezer begins Mi Yemalel Gevurais, Gematria, Elazar ben Horkinus, the author. Seder Olam begins with the word Meyadam, Gematria Yoisi. All of Torah Shabbat Peh, the first word is a Gematria, alluding to the author. Every single chibur of the Torah Shabbat Peh. By the way, Megala Mukos adds, famous thing, that when David HaMelech is in Tzara and he doesn't know what to do, he uses the words Esa, Esa Einai. Why Esa? Because think about it, where does David come from? Rus. Why is Rus Mutter Lavai Bekal? Because the women from Mayav are Mutter. Why are the women from Mayav Mutter? Because even though the men should have brought us food, the women don't have to. Why? Because women are Tsanua. What's the source that women are Tsanua? Aye, Sarah, Ishtecha. So therefore when David HaMelech was in trouble, he said, Esa. Esa is Rosh Tevois. Aye, Sarah, Ishtecha. And then finally, it's brought on the kever. Amos Shadiber, Sha'omer Malav. They say about Megala Mukos, Shadiber Imai Eliyahu Panim El Panim. Eliyahu Hanavi spoke to the Megala Mukos face to face. His nifter Yud Gimel Av in the year Shin Tzadi Gimel in the year 1633. Zechusa Yagin Aleinu. Amen. Okay, it's a very great zchus to be here at the kever of Rabbi Lezer Ashkenazi. Rabbi Lezer Ashkenazi lived from 1512 to 1585. Besides being a Talmudist, he was a Rav, he was a physician, and a very multi-dimensional scholar. He was a Rav in Egypt from 1538 to 1560. He had to go to Cyprus for 2 years.
he had a desire to travel to many lands and explore many cultures and many various countries. He went to Venice, then to Prague. He was a student of the Alshich, and Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi wrote, he's the Baal Masei Hashem. Masei Hashem is a classic commentary on the Torah, a very important commentary on the Torah. There he writes a parish on the Haggadah. On the Haggadah Shel Pesach, Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi writes, we dip on Pesach twice. Shnei Pa'amim. Why do we dip twice? One, to commemorate the dipping of why we went down to Mitzrayim, because we dipped Yosef's tunic in blood, and one to commemorate the dipping of how we got out of Mitzrayim, that we got together the Aguda Achas, and we dipped the Agudas Ezov in Dam. So in other words, says Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, we went down to Mitzrayim because of Sinas Chinam, because we dipped Yosef's tunic in blood. We got out of Mitzrayim because we were Zoicha to come together by Aguda Achas. He also wrote a classic commentary on the Megillah. You know what it's called? Yosef Lekach. Yosef Lekach. I want to share with you one thing that he says. He says there's this very mysterious mitzvah in Purim. Chayev inish lebesume ad layada bein arhaman lebarach Mordechai. And many wonder, why would we have such a mitzvah to drink so much? We know that alcohol has caused almost all the ills of society. The Chet of Adam HaRishon, Noach, Shlomo HaMelech's Mishlei, is the primary subject of Mishlei are the dangers of yayin. So what? Why do we have a mitzvah to drink so much? Says Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, the Yom Tif of Purim was enacted in the aftermath of the Churban, but they never would be able to celebrate a Purim thinking about Churban Beis HaMikdash. So they're misakein to drink so much to forget the Churban. The problem is, you can't write it's not nice. So they couched it in the terminology, but what it really means is one day a year we forget about the Churban Beis HaMikdash. By the way, that's why Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes that in every Suda we always make a Zecher l'Churban except for on Purim. Why? Because of what Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi writes, that there's one day a year we forget about the Churban Beis HaMikdash. This is Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi, the Baal Masei Hashem, and the Baal Yosef Lekach, Zuchusa Yogen Aleinu.
Okay, good morning everyone. L'kavod, the holy day of Lag BaOmer, Elachvaitcha. The following idea occurred to me this morning, connecting Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and the Ramah, a new idea. It's well known, Rav Avadia brings in the Tshuvas, that the word minhag is oisios Gehenam. What Rav Avadia is trying to bring out is that not every minhag is legitimate, and some minhagim don't bring you to a good place. That's what Rav Avadia is bringing out. But what do we see from here? That if somebody observes a minhag toiv, an authentic minhag, it must be that if a wrong minhag brings you to a wrong place, the observance of a correct minhag protects you from Gehenna. It must be that what's megan from Gehenna is observance of a good minhag. If you look in the Gemara in Sukkah, the Rashbi says, Yachal ani lifter as kol ha'olam kulai mimidas hadin. Ayin Sham Rabbi Kiva Eger. Rabbi Kiva Eger says, look in Avos Rab Nasan. In Avos Rab Nasan it says, Reb Shimon says, he will make sure that anyone around him will never see Pnei Gehenna. So the Rashbi protects the world from Gehenna. Nobody championed the observance of Minhagim more than the Ramah. The Ramah was the first Paisek who introduces the idea that the Minhag of a community could override Shittais in the Halacha. So the Ramah championed the Kayach HaMinhag. So it means the Ramah, like the Rashbi, also has the Kayach to be megan from Gehenna. So both the Rashbi and the Ramah have the Kayach of Yachal Ani Liftar Es Kala Olam Kulai Mimidas Hadin Umidina Shal Gehenna. That's why last night I saw for the first time some of the Hasidim, they took out a bow and arrow and they were shooting the arrow, and there was a machlokes. How many times are they chayiv to shoot the bow? One said 3, one said 180. As a, the derech tzachas. And the one said, what are you talking about? He said, no, minhag Yisrael. So we have to know how many times you have to shoot. But at the Ramah's kever, the Ramah championed the cause of minhag, so that was an appropriate commemoration. Zechusam Yagen Aleinu, have a wonderful day. We're here in Krakow at the location of the very first Beis Yaakov established by Sarah Schneer. You see on the sign, she was nifter on the 26th of Adar in 1935. It's interesting that my grandmother's sister was on the way from Sachachev to Krakow, at the time that the war broke out, and she had to turn around even though she was accepted in the Beis Yaakov. There's a well-known story about 65 years ago. A historic bris milah took place for a grandson of Rav Moshe Chevroni, who, by the way, was a grandson of the Ger Rebbe, and it was like a who's who of Gedolei Yisrael. There are many dignitaries there. Many of the grandchildren of the Gedolim of the previous generation, grandchildren of the Chavetz Chaim, Slonim Rebbe, Vishnitzer Rebbe, Ger Rebbe, grandson of the Alter of Nevardik, Alter of Slobodka, and the Alter of Kelm. And Rabbi Cheskel Sarna, the Rosh Hashiva of Hebron, a great man in his own right, he began to stir the pot. He got up and posed a controversial challenge. He said, in the last 100 years, which individual did the most, achieve the most for the Jewish people? I know what you're thinking. Everyone in the room thinks it was their grandfather. You think it was your grandfather, the Chavetz Chaim, the Alter Nevardik, the Alter of Slobodka, the influence they had, the Talmidim, the Sfarim. I'm here to tell you it was none of them. And the guests at the bris became very uncomfortable. They started to motion to Reb Chatzkel to sit down. They whispered, please, stop picking a fight, sit down. People gasped, outrageous. But Rabbi Cheskel didn't back down. He said, I'm going to tell you more. The one who did the most for Klal Yisrael in the last 100 years never even learned a Blat Gemara. So at that point, they had enough. They said, stop making a scene. And he continued, he said, I'll tell you even more. But when I say the name, you'll all agree with me. They laughed. But when Rabbi Cheskel Sarna mentioned the name, they all agreed as predicted. The name was Sarah Schneer. Through her establishment of Jewish education for girls, she was able to preserve the tradition of Klal Yisrael. B'nai Torah were able to continue learning, knowing that they would one day find Zivug Hagon, somebody who would be Machshav Torah. This was the great achievement of Sarah Schneer. Niftar Chaf Vav Adar Tafrei Sadekei Tehei Nishmat Satsura B'tzar HaChaim.